Is it 9? Oh, yep, there we go. Okay, it is now 9 a.m. on this Saturday, 8/22. Took a little school board number 406, our board retreat meeting. This meeting has now come to order. Roll call starting with
Ara Papia, Director, District Number 3.
Dave Larson, District 5.
Mitch Foran, District 1.
Superintendent, Dr. Concha Pedrosa.
And then I think we just have our one guest, so welcome Sylvia. And welcome Sheila. Thank you so much for taking the time to come talk to us today. Does the chair have approval for the agenda as it's currently laid out?
So moved.
Seconded.
Anything on the discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the agenda has passed. I will hand it over to you, Sheila, for our board retreat discussion.
Okay. Anyone else, Dr. Hunter, coming?
Did,
Just texted him in the past, so. And then just also letting you guys know there's breakfast back home.
Yep.
And coffee. Very good. All right, let's see this. Yes. All right.
and
All right, good morning.
good morning.
Morning, today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good conversations. So wanted to start with just a check-in. If I'm hearing you still.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel so far away from Yeah.
Okay, so just, yeah, quick check-in, kind of what's giving you energy this summer? Either, inside or outside of your board role, so it can just be sort of what's keeping you going right now, what's exciting you, where's your energy coming from, and, I'm happy to start and say, I kind of started this conversation, with, Director Mitch, that it seems to be like in a reorganizing, cleansing mode at our house, and, feeling really good about, I have like vastly reorganized office closet. It would be like where I can find things now. So I'm feeling, yeah, it's such a nice, and like I just open the doors now sometimes just to look at like the one place that's super organized. So it feels like it's giving me the energy readiness for this next school year. It's coming up quick. So that's for me. What do you think?
I've just been mostly trying to keep on top of our applications and kind of putting out the word for Director of District 2 and just kind of doing unique stuff, making sure that I'm out there and it's pumping me up to help out the next school year.
Yeah.
I feel like, housework maintenance is always something that keeps you busy. I think one nice thing is enjoying summer while we can, when the sun's out, whether it's going swimming at Lake Washington or going to Seward Park or just playing soccer or tennis. Those are some, you need hobbies to keep up with, I think, day-to-day board meetings or, work and other important agenda items that we discussed. So,
Yeah. I love
that's
that.
what's exciting.
So I'm just spending a little bit this summer. There's a state group that's funding education, funding equity and funding equity and education work group, and I got to be involved in. They're starting to develop their recommendations, which are going to come out in September, and got to put forward a lot of ideas I have about how to change the funding system, which I'm hoping are going to get in their final recommendations. We'll see. I guess you're going to be I think the final meeting is on Monday. And so, we'll see how that goes, but that's what's, I've been working on that thing for 10 years, so we'll see how that turns out.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Culminating in work there?
Oh, it's added, I took a pause because I had some surgery over the summer, so that was good. I mean, it was good to take the pause, but now I'm anxious to get back to the start of school, start of summer school. I feel like we've had lots of starts. And so we had summer school, which was a big endeavor because it was full time, and then now this, and so it's just getting ready. But we just did a systems check last Thursday, and we're ready to go. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That feels like early. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess-
actually, it was funny. Somebody said in the meeting, this is the most calm I've felt in 3 years, and I was like, this, yay. This is good. So, you know, our goal is always to make sure that there's no issues with buses, there's no issues with lunch, like all those things, and so, but we had everyone there, we did a nice, we always try to do a couple systems checks before start school, just to make sure, and so that was just relieving to me, because like I said, I was gone for a good chunk of time, so just trusting the people to do what they know how to do. So it's been a good in terms of making sure that, we're ready to go for kids and families. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, bus stop, the bus route flyer from my little brother. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like very exciting. It's like, you know, during the summer, he was like, yeah, I don't know. And now it's like close to school, start of school year. He's like, yeah, I kind of want to go now.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm going to enroll 15 families on Thursday.
You what?
We enrolled 15 families
Oh,
on
wow.
Thursday, so that's great.
Exciting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Feels like a big difference from what, like 3 years at like, you know, everyone feels ready. The amount of times I've shared the story of the office leaking
Yeah.
to others. We were for like
Yeah.
first day.
My first year, yeah.
The flooding, like
Down the flood, the video.
that has stuck with me. And so shared, I'm like, well, you know.
My first year here was not, and Dave can attest to this, it was every other month, there was just something major, like just something.
Sometimes every week.
Yeah, sometimes every week, but, and it was funny, because we started off, because one thing, you know, we got school ready to go. But then it was just like, oh, you're in binding conditions, oh, you have a levy campaign, oh, there's a flood, like.
Yeah.
Oh, no biggie, let's get back in there, it was just constant, so to be in this phase where people are like feeling like they can breathe
Yeah.
is a good place to be.
You also actually got some good projects, like solar panels are going up
Yeah.
on our.
Yeah.
And that looks like it's coming along really well, so
Nice.
that'll save us a ton of money.
Yep.
All right, so wanted to just take a few minutes last time I was here, we spent some time talking about kind of our headlines in the future and what we envision for the school district, you know, 3 to 5 years from now, or even further into the future. And so we captured those headlines. I'm gonna give you a moment to just kind of glance at those and let you know I can read them as well. Like a lot of you, we have like best schools in the state, TSD District of the Year, Tacoma School District District of Distinction. The board of TSD has come together to overcome their differences, create a template for surrounding school districts. It's really modeling for others. The best schools for MLL students in the state. Foster Drama Club's newest production sells out. It's like really some fun and academic excellence, right? So some really big goals, visions for where we want to be. As you look at these, I'm just curious, what stands out to you now about as you look at all of them together? Maybe you recognize your own headline that you put up there. And then just as you think about the board as it is now, we also know like we'll have new people coming on. What do these aspirations really require from you as a board, and including those that are gonna join this board? What are we gonna need to make this happen?
Well, keep pushing. I mean, all the things that we've talked about, the solar panels are, you know, our high expectations, our goals. If you look at almost all of them, it's top accommodations, no matter what we're looking at, and whether it's Foster's Drama Club or the best school in the state or the district or just academic excellence overall. No matter how we're going to do that, we're going to have to center our students' voices and really make sure that they're getting what they need rather than just, you know, I don't want to say bare minimum because our high expectations are part of our goals, but we don't want to have that on our heels mindset.
I'll just add, it's also complex because, for example, the equity in funding is important because that equity in funding gives us the funds so that we can focus on not just academics, but also enrichment, all the opportunities that our kids deserve. And I'll just give an example. I sent a letter to the governor's office because of the FAFSA grant requirement and him saying that doesn't cost anything. So I wrote a letter basically saying, okay, because we're now considered we're number 8 in the state of Washington for FAFSA completion.
Oh.
Out of 295 districts, that's a huge piece. Thank you,
Yeah.
Foster High School staff. However, I needed them to know there's 4 key positions that supported that are all funded outside of the prototypical model. So that the state allocates for. So if we want to continue that success for our students, people need to understand, especially for kids who speak multiple languages, who don't have access, who are first gen, it does take resources. And so that's the piece that just keeping in mind, like, how do we make sure that we have and center the resources that we do have while also addressing the gaps. So it's all connected, but I think we can get there, but we just also have to keep pounding these other things because they're all all the things in education are interconnected.
So I'm hearing like system,
Yeah.
to get to these headlines,
Yeah.
keeping like systems thinking, systems approach.
Absolutely.
To the work. Gotta take-
Yeah, the other word that you used, I think is a key word around, and that's called focus.
Mhm.
Because there's so many things, distractions that can, and we know distractions will come up. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way this works, but to stay focused on, some of these big goals and what, and take a look at each decision, each thing that we're doing, how it feeds into these things is important because you can, like I said, you can very easily get distracted and, with all kinds of side issues. And so it's been tough in this district to keep focus on things, focused and aligned, as opposed to going over here and over there and over there. And that's how you get sidetracked and you don't, get to some of these things.
Yeah.
So maybe just hop off what Dave said was, making sure that these are, I'd say, again, I'm looking back and I'm like, some of these could have been, when I said like best schools in the state, probably wanted to be more specific, on certain criteria and to measurable, made measurable, and also one important part was within new members coming in, make sure we have a great set of group and value agreements, and we have a common understanding. And there's trust.
Yeah.
And that trust will be built over time. But I think those are things we didn't think until now. So,
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I heard kind of multiple levels of, there's the like bigger sort of meta systems thinking approach design, but like within that being really strategic and focused, like trying to focus in on the things that you're doing, but then also recognizing like humans and the people side of the work, so that take the trust building and the understanding of how we work together, and as we bring new folks in, maybe actually taking some more time intentional around those pieces. I added that part. But to build trust, like trust happens over time, and there are ways to like set up for success in terms of alignment around our values or the ways that we are like conflict inevitably happens. We can sort of front load when conflict happens. These are the approaches or ways that we navigate that as a board. That's actually some of what we're going to dive into for the second half of today, is giving you some of those tools and strategies that become part of the onboarding process for for new members, but also gives you all a framework and some tools to use. So that you can pick, because there are things that are gonna come up, there's gonna be competing priorities or, a system is big, there's multiple different ways to navigate and move and shift within systems, so how you come together to decide on those things. You all have big brains and big ideas and lived experience, it would be weird if you did disagree on the best ways or the approaches to do that, so how do we engage in like productive conflict and productive, differences in approach and perspectives?
The other thing about this, all these things are really hard.
Yeah.
They're not easy. None of this stuff is easy.
Exactly.
And so you have to persist.
Yep. And persist collectively. Alright. So with that, we're gonna go a little bit into like, what do we need as a board to really reach those big headlines, and of course, those can get more specific and measurable, which I appreciate, like, yeah, some of those, like, what does that mean, like, best in what? But to get there, we want to embrace a growth mindset, and Dr. Pedros actually found this article that was written by, getting the Maloney.
Oh, yeah,
Rick Maloney, is it Rick?
Yeah.
Rob, Rick Maloney, around some characteristics that successful boards have in terms of the ways that they work together and ways that they operate. And one of those being sort of embracing a growth mindset. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna have everyone first just kind of skim through the article on your own, and then we're gonna partner up and kind of look at specific themes. So, scenarios, it looks like these are the, yeah, our and I'm gonna put a little background music on. So take about 5 minutes or so, just skim through. If you want to know an idea or strategy that feels relevant or applicable to you or to the board, you can highlight that. You might need pens, I've got some different colored pens. That's helpful for you.
I also have extra highlighters if anyone wants one.
Yeah, it can be fun. We'll take like 2 more minutes to finish reading through. And we're gonna partner up to keep talking about it. Okay. So we're gonna keep kind of pushing on. We're gonna keep pushing on the, have you thinking about like the strategies that you wanna embrace, but think that might push our thinking or comfort levels. But we're gonna have you go a little bit deeper. So there are several strategies kind of shared in there, right? Like around celebrating or embracing challenges and criticism or feedback. How you like build in sort of feedback or reflection cycles. So what we're gonna do, I've got some discussion questions. I'm gonna have you all partner up. So David and Art, if you want to start together, and we'll mix up throughout the day. And then Mitch and Dr. Pedroza, you pair up. But let's have our meetings with Aria for group A.
Cool.
So focusing your group kind of thinking about celebrations and the strategies around embracing challenges and criticism. And then group B, sort of the encouraging growth mindset, the feedback and reflection, sort of related strategies, which is kind of the second half of that. But really diving into these sort of key questions too. How well are you doing things now? And sharing like specific examples, because we're gonna share back out with each other, like where you're doing this well already, because we always want to celebrate our strengths. Where maybe it's not happening too. And then you can dive a little bit around like what responsibilities the board have to evaluate and improve its own practice. I would also focus really, so first question and the last one, like how can a board be like appropriately curious and accountable without like moving into management operations or, sort of staying in our lanes. So we're gonna sort of recap our roles and responsibilities. Yeah, if there's anything else that stood out to you that you wanna like immediately just start talking about with your partner, that's totally fine too. We're gonna take about 10 minutes for this part of the studying the article, and then we'll come back and share out some.
Do you want me to pause the recording?
Everything's sort of guaranteed.
Uh, And kind of keeping away from heavy updates.
Hold on.
Remember,
Need
projects.
projects.
Well, they just do that,
Water.
you know, we used to have some.
Well, Debbie,
Yeah.
Quarterly meeting, if you
Because
mean-
the city,
so-
I mean, we used to pay a little bit to there to get some of our stuff in there, and city used to pay a little bit. What happened, the city decided to pull out.
So what was
Essentially.
I will,
bankruptcy.
no, yeah,
And
yes.
then they just did it wrong. But it's in.
But I think that's just, everything will be critical, I think the board reflection will be critical, like every other month or something, just doing those pieces.
But that's one of the things on top of it, we have.
And then
discussion with
getting
the city
more into schools.
Is
I think.
why are you guys not letting us publish articles here?
Too. That was one thing that.
All right.
This last year.
I'm gonna invite us back. I'm gonna jot some notes down as we share out. But curious, yeah, what are the things we think we're doing well? And then other takeaways or insights you all made in terms of sort of the board's role to evaluate and improve itself, or sort of that appropriate level of curiosity and accountability. So what came up for you? Anyone can jump in first from your group?
I would maybe just talk about celebrating embracing challenges and criticism. One thing the article talked about was sometimes of constructive criticism. So as a board, we usually, most oftentimes we take criticism, from both parties and try to outweigh and make our determination. I think that's something that we still make sure to do, whether it's making sure we read emails from the public, open the floor for public comment, make sure we're available if, parents, if residents or anyone wants to discuss any sort of, challenges that they're facing, and, celebrating and embracing the work is also important. The article talks about, doing subtle improvement plans is what I would call. So, not saying like I can't do this, but saying I'm currently improving at this. I think that's a culture thing. So within our organization, I would say, if you wake up every morning and look at the mirror and you say, I'm great, I'm wonderful, I'm gonna do well on my exam. I'm gonna score a goal in my soccer team at school. So I think those mentalities all already set you up for success in a way, because if you already are thinking with your mindset there's no way I'm going to be able to graduate, that's already a step backwards. So I think it's just culturally, I would say, just making sure we're all trying to have that growth mindset. Again, the article talks about it. And then they brought up a really good point, which was we were talking about the research that was conducted from the public schools regarding comparing the success between school districts that have higher expectations versus lowering and putting excess limiting the amount of work or that's needed for students to complete a certain requirements for whether or not, for instance, homework or I think that was another thing we talked about.
I think that hit on the second, how can board appropriately curious? And I would say hold the system accountable. So we have, for example, every year the schools come in with their school improvement plans, and schools, they have goals. Smarty goals, we call them Smarty goals, but and one of my things for years has been, they'll set a goal and then the next year they won't talk about last year's goal. And so how do you do, the end thing, review, reflect, and adjust if you don't talk about last year's goal? And so it's taken quite a bit of pushing to try and this year it was a little better, but they have to, it's about actually looking at last year's goal and saying, did you achieve it? Okay, why? Did you not achieve it? Why? And so this is not about, accusatory or anything. It's, what I'm looking for is, did you do that analysis? Did you think about that? And did you, come up with some rational reasons for why and why not? And if you didn't, maybe you didn't quite achieve it, but maybe it grew, that's good. I'm always happy. I'm much more concerned about the trend, if we're moving in the right direction, than, did you achieve? And, the other thing about goals is if you the goals are too easy and you achieve them all, then I say, well, you probably didn't push yourself enough, So I'm always, but on the other hand, you probably should achieve some of them, or at least, and if you're improving, that's kind of how you hold the whole system accountable to things like that. So that's kind of an example of what we're kind of wrestling. I think we're getting a lot better at the district level. In our strategic plan, we have specific goals, and Dr. Rose is working on, producing like a dashboard so we'll be able to see it really easily. You don't have to probe a lot to find it, did you achieve it, did you not? And then once you have the data, then the interesting part is the analysis, is the reflection. Okay, so what are you going to do about it?
Perfect. Well, to kind of piggyback off of that, yeah, I mean, both of you guys made great points. If we readjust our mindset towards a more positive reinforcement, where we are saying we can accomplish these things and we aren't setting goals too low, if we are having that constant, I want to shoot higher, I think that we are doing that right now. We are definitely taking the time on a Saturday to come in here and say, okay, well, this is what we kind of want to do. This is what we are currently doing, and how do we take our feedback and reflect on it to create more SMART goals or SMARTY goals towards these. And I think that we are appropriately curious in kind of getting that feedback, not just between ourselves, but between our public comment and the people that come in. One thing I did want to read specific off of this article was, when school board meetings focus on student outcomes, administrators focus on the reports to the board on what it takes to achieve successful student outcomes, including developing the capacity and the performance of teachers in the classroom. It's an entire culture that, we set the tone for, but whether or not it's happening down on the field, it reflects back towards us, and whether or not our rules, our policies, our resolutions are actually being implemented. So part of that reflection today is, how do we improve it in our practice? How do we improve the feedback that we're collecting and get those reports in on time? And how we kind of make it fair for our administrators, our teachers, and ourselves, right? And we just kind of talked about how we take our SMART goals and how we need to adjust from there. Otherwise, that last bit of, they fulfill a system-wide responsibility when they set an example for others throughout the school system, as that summary on this article, I think this was awesome. I think we can achieve a lot.
I'll just add that one of two things just to add to this is, one is thinking about some of our families are feeling very vulnerable right now. So, and also a board setting is very intimidating to them. So just wondering how we can think through other ways of engagement with communities that meets them where they are at the schools, or maybe at the church, like through the church, or wherever we identify the group is. Because I think we're gonna have to do that now for a while, especially now as our parents are pulling back a little bit, because for whatever reason, or for their own safety, or for shifts in the environment. That's just one thing. And then the last thing to add is just making sure that we bring back reflection time in the board meetings, not just monthly, but maybe try, every 2 to 3 months, coming back and analyzing. So board, how did we do on our values? How did we do on some of these things? How are we doing in our goals? Like, just even asking ourselves, taking the board rubric and going, okay, like, let's just take 2 of these pieces here.
Yeah.
And how are we doing? Are we challenging, but in a supportive way? Are we having professional discourse? It doesn't have to be conflict, but what is professional discourse? Are we holding ourselves accountable to asking these questions, these kinds of things? Just those are only two things I have to add is thinking about engaging with community differently and then really doing, some board reflection time together.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I, love that. I will just share from my experience of preparing for the meeting. I just went to the like, Deb had said, like, here's where you can access the agenda. And so I was looking online and, just reading the process for like, to make public comment. It's like, email your written statement, send it here, do this. I was like, immediately, I was like, I don't know that I would ever do it. And I feel very comfortable writing emails, writing documents, writing in English, like doing all these things. So that was just like, just as a side note, like external person, like going to, like, hey, if I wanted to like give feedback to the board, I would probably wouldn't go through all those steps.
There are
And-
people who don't follow steps.
and there are people who don't follow those steps, but even like those who are rule followers or are
Yeah.
maybe hesitant to come up to a group of authority or in a public, kind of setting, and obviously we have rules around, it's for like the nature of transparency and all these pieces. The flip sides are, have effects, so yeah, just wanted to, like, this idea of meeting community where they're at too, or in different settings, I would say explore that more.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, let's, thank you for sharing those insights. We're gonna go and, Dr. Mendoza, you kind of segued us into a perfect, and I did plant seed, or try this here.
I forgot, so that's great.
But you mentioned this thing of like, maybe let's, in order to like be reflective or to be a growth oriented board, we need to have reflection time in the board meetings themselves, or like, and ask ourselves like more periodically, how are we doing, on this or this? So that could be like one example of a way that we are, ensuring we're living into being a growth oriented board. So those post-its I gave you, and actually I think they can't plug in, with like, as a growth oriented board, in order to examine our own past practice, I wrote it more vaguely, but we must create time for reflection and self-assessment. So that's almost exactly what Dr. Pedrosa said, like, we must like create time for reflection in the board meetings themselves, right? So that could be a tangible action or practice of living into this. So I'd love for you all to do is take a moment, and you can partner up if it feels easier to like draft one together, one or two, but like, you can pick any of these. So as a growth oriented board, in order to welcome feedback and useful criticism, I know I put we must, I almost never like use the word we must. You could say we need to, or we must fill in the blank. Or you can pick another one. In order to adjust when something isn't working, we need, or we will. That makes sense? You're gonna write a couple of like, what would this look like in practice for you all as a board? And you can use, we already have one to start with. We're gonna build in time for reflection in the board meetings themselves. I would encourage getting even more specific, of like, is it every quarter? Is it every other board meeting? I'm actually having to write this on those post-its, and I'm gonna collect them and type them up and give them back to you all as reminders. Or there are actual structural things that can just be added to the agenda structure for future meetings. Right now.
Okay. I said we need to talk to one another to allow equal engagement and opportunity for agenda items or community concerns that come to us. We need to find a way to reach our community in a less formal setting, i.e. coffee with Concy or coffee with Ara or coffee with Mitch or coffee with Dave, et cetera, et cetera. We need to support one another and allow for time for the board to express their concerns while allowing time for things to get done on both the admin side and on our side. We need more opportunities for students in our CTE and alternative learning programs and be able to oversee that not only the college path, but the career path, and continued learning is a value that we emulate both in and out of board meetings. And we must work together to push out a growth mindset, not just district-wide, but citywide.
I had focused on the last one in order to make more appropriately curious and accountable. Without moving into management or operations, we must focus on process, focus on student outcomes, and highlight successes as examples to follow and learn from.
I only wrote the first two, so it says a growth-oriented board in order to welcome feedback and get useful criticism, but we must be willing to accept the conversations. It says SMARTY in our framework for outcomes. And then I also said as a growth-oriented board, in order to examine our own practice, we may revisit our policies every year, value group agreements, make updates as needed.
I have a lot, but not a lot, but I would say, but some of them are repeated. The two I just will add is just, we have to balance accountability with curiosity. And I will add that, and then just trust that everyone's doing the best that they can. With what they, so that people are learning, they're new to their job, like whatever the thing is that they're doing the best and that goes back to the balancing accountability with curiosity.
All right, I will grab those in a bit. I just wanted to kind of reground us to in the, why do we have? Can we see, maybe click on the PowerPoint itself? Just sometimes it like switches over to the, there we go, okay, that's okay.
I think we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, this was from our last meeting, just sort of a visual representation of sort of the roles as the board of directors being our collective authorities, really setting direction, setting those policies, and ensuring accountability to those policies and that direction and vision. Superintendent leads that implementation and manages district operations and advises the board. And then we don't have any student representatives with us today, but to remember that our role is really around sharing student experiences, elevating student voice, so really helping you stay student-centered by having students here, and then help really inform the board decisions. And we put that here too, to just really clarify, like, board is the one who's like actually setting the policies and the form board, like the elected directors for doing that. And it's really important, particularly with students, to be clear about like, where is their authority or not, or like, where are they voting members or not. And so emphasizing here, like, they're informing the board decisions, they're not making board decisions. Great. But everyone has a shared responsibility, right, around being student-centered for their decision-making, for building that public trust, students among other students, really supporting that respectful discourse and transparent communication, and constructive partnership, right? You all are working with lots of different folks and groups, right, and how do you build those partnerships? Again, this is just kind of
I'd
a
say
mess.
something about this, about the accountability is the tricky one because, and where does it cross into, operations and that kind of stuff. So for me, it's a lot about accountability of a good process. So if we get presented with some, we want to do this and this and this. The example I always use is from years ago. I mean, one of the things we're asked to do is group curriculum. well, we're not curriculum experts, but years ago, they came with us with the writing curriculum that they wanted in. But what we ended up rejecting it, not because we didn't like the curriculum, it's because we didn't like the process they went through was not inclusive. And so we threw it back and they actually ran a better process and came up with a different curriculum. So that there's that distinction. We're not, by accountability, we weren't saying, we're the experts on curriculum, but we do insist that you follow a good quality process. And if you don't follow a good quality process, then we're not gonna. So that's one of the kind of, a little bit blurry lines about when does accountability go into, operations.
Yeah, and that's a good one. We're gonna talk a little bit about, boundary creep. Because sometimes, yeah, there's those blurred lines, and sometimes the boundaries start to creep into the other roles or responsibilities. And so these are just a few questions. I'm really just want to go open to if there's one that speaks to you that you want to talk about as a group. We have a few minutes to do that. We're going to take a short break before we move into our next segment. But I think that do that example around the curriculum. So the board is not picking curriculum, right? But you are supporting the process, right? And then you have a curriculum.
Yeah, we have a curriculum council that's actually governed by two bodies. We have a board policy and it's in our labor contract as well. So they overlap, but there's very strict protocols around, yeah.
But we'd be curious if there's other examples of blurred boundaries or around that how we interpret accountability. That we want to revisit or clarify. It's a collective.
Yeah, so there is, so another one that we do every year is approve a budget. So then the question becomes, very quickly, are we talking about specific items that get spent for this or that? Or are we talking about, making sure there's a good process? For example, this year, there was, for some variety of reasons, we didn't go through the usual community involvement process because of the capacity in the organization, and we were doing a kind of once in a generation shifting of our financial and student information systems. So personally, I didn't like the fact that we didn't have so much community involvement in that process, and I kind of reluctantly voted for it. But that's one where particularly budget can get gray really quickly. I mean, yeah, when do you say, well, no, we think you should spend money here and not here, and is that crossing the line? Well, yeah, what process did you go through to make some of those decisions?
There's other thoughts on that, or
Maybe I'll just add on is that, to David's point, managing budgets could be always a gray area, because if there are certain activities which aren't spent during the school year, they are able to be shifted and moved. And so, but that's also, our trust within the staff, the administration, the resources that we approve are going to be utilized. Again, it's just, yeah, I mean, both blur boundaries, there's, I feel like when I think of boundaries, I always think of okay, making sure that what we're asking isn't something that's, that isn't something that's gonna bite us back, because, I mean, we want community input, we want folks to know what is our process when we're making that decision. We're not the ones doing it, but have we taken into consideration every little detail? But I think it's just it does. It's a good question. I mean, I feel like I'm still thinking.
yeah.
No, I love that. I mean, we can tie it back to the fence around Tukwila as one of our examples, right? So if you guys saw,
I shared.
but did you see the Tukwila?
Yeah.
Yeah. So while we did have a process for it, how much of it was followed through with, how much of it was community engagement in a quality manner rather than just here's the posting and here we go.
And I bring it back to the budget too. I mean, been fighting for years about, we typically, it's required by law that there's a budget, public comment, period, and typically nobody ever comes. And my theory on why that is because it's not presented in a way that the public can digest it. And so, made several suggestions over there. If we haven't gotten to that point, you need to present, like a budget can be a very dry accounting document that nobody's going to pay. And that's typically what happens, as opposed to presenting, this year we're going to cut our outdoor education. We're going to,
Yeah.
have less counselors, something that the public can actually, and not when I say the public, I'm talking about the staff, I'm talking about the parents, I'm talking about students, can actually dig their teeth into and say, oh, yeah, that's not good for students. And so we haven't really gotten, I've brought in some examples from Edmonds and different places where they've done it in a better way, where you can have a survey with understandable things that happen that the public can relate to, and then they can rank, and then you can have a better process for it. So we're not there yet, but I think that's an area where we need to improve.
100%.
So I'm curious, I just want to push this a little bit. So this is your time there's 3 of you here, you got a couple more, some folks are gonna roll off, you're gonna have, an open seat, right? There's gonna be new people coming in. Just wanna make sure, wanna help you all set a tone to if there have been examples of boundary creeping, or a process that a pattern of things that have been happening that isn't actually working or is against policy or is causing headaches, so I'm gonna go back to the to make this flow really well, right? And everyone kind of doing their part and roles, just sort of open to invite again for things we might want to address or talk about, or revisit clarify policy, actually this is how we need to operate, what we've seen happen over a few times. Maybe there is nothing, I just want to make sure we're creating.
So there's stuff.
There's stuff. I feel like most of you are talking at me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna invite you to talk towards each other around some of these things.
My only thing I'm gonna add is that, so there is stuff that comes up, but it's always in a gray area. Mostly it's a gray area, right?
Yeah.
Either the policy's not as clear, but usually what that happens then is we have a conversation. So I try to have conversations let me handle that, or this is actually under my jurisdiction. I try to just be as upfront and transparent as I can be, because first of all, I'm going back to the value of just everyone's doing the best that they can, right? Back to that. And so there are things that are under my jurisdiction, and there's some things that are under the board's purview. And but there are some gray areas, and I think that's always gonna come up. And when there's a gray area, I think we just have to talk about it. Okay, let's just have a conversation. Why do you think this is important? But why, that way we can get an understanding, because, so why do you need this, or whatever the issue is? And then we can have that mutual understanding, and then, okay, we can do this or not do this, depending on either the capacity of the staff or okay, yeah, I see this as a need. We'll make sure you get that. So I just feel, yes, I think that's part of being human, right? In a relationship, we're 6 people that are working together. And, but yeah, there are things that, but so far I have never felt personally as the superintendent, when I've had the conversations, I've never had anybody say, well, I've never had any of that happen. So I think, but I do engage in that conversation, and I think they do too. So I think it could be better maybe, but I think, right now the process works, my style maybe works well with this way of doing things. I just believe I had a value here around talk directly, or call in the person if there's a conflict, right there, just do the one-to-one conversation. Because there might be something I don't understand, right? And I might not, so I need information, and that's being curious and using inquiry questions. Yeah, all my stuff here, right here. But I think I just want to address that it does come up, but I think we have a decent process to address those things. At least I do. I mean, because I'm the operations side, right, of the house, so I feel like I think I have a good enough relationship and trust that I can actually engage in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think this year we I mean, one of our values is transparency. And I feel like this year, particularly, I mean, the budget process is a big deal. I mean, that's where our values and I feel like, you know, it got shortchanged this year and it wasn't as transparent. I understand, you know, the reason, you know, capacity and so forth, so on, but that's an area where I think, you know, we need to do better at, you know, because decisions, I mean, were made to, you know, cut the outdoor education, and I just happened to be rummaging through the budget and I could see that, but there wasn't a list that came out at any point and said, this is what we're gonna cut and this is what we're not gonna, you know, this year. So I think that there's, some improvements in transparency, particularly on budget items that we need to do better at.
I 100% agree. Something that was brought to my attention by community members was questions didn't really happen until after the presentation was given. She does a great job of summarizing everything. She does a great job of making it make sense. And I'm a person that's bad at numbers, so it just gets jumbled up in my head. So it's a little harder for me. So I think, and this is something that I brought up already, if we readjusted so the presentation was given during the public comment section, and then we allow for that time to think of ask questions, I don't know if that would shrink the amount of confusion or lack of understanding. But that was one thing that I thought that we could probably do as a fix, but that's a conversation I'm gonna have with the full board before I just do it, you know what I mean?
Well, and we are gonna have the budget advisory group next year. I mean,
Perfect.
it's just, that's actually board policy to do that. But we have a small staff, and cumulatively literally killed us.
Yeah.
In March, April, May. That won't happen again. Hopefully, I'll be out of here next time that happens, but I agree with Dave. It is true that we could have done a better job, and we didn't. So yeah, we have to own that.
And I think the other big part of that is just, and this is true of all of the CSOs. I mean, they're accountants by nature, and so they present, and the accountant, you absolutely have to do that because it's required by law that you can balance everything. But in terms of talking to the public, you know, I mean, you're not alone in you know, numbers or accounting. That's not something that most people can relate to particularly, but you can if you translate. You need to translate that into specific things that people can relate to, like, you know, we're going to cut this program, we're going to not have an extra account, whatever, you know, things that the class sizes are going to go up. I mean, this is something we hear from our students all the time. Those kinds of things people can relate to very quickly, and then you'll get. And the
Questions.
Reactions will start flowing once everybody, you know, you present it in a way that, you know, the students can understand it, the parents can understand it, the staff can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think we need to, it's the big thing I've seen over the years.
Yeah.
We need to kind of improve that. And it's sometimes it's tough, I think, for the accounting people to do that. That's not kind of their mindset. So we might need some help from the CAO or, you know, different people that,
Yeah, I love it. Something I also wanted to kind of touch on was our templates for presentations. I know we have a template for the SIFs or the SIPs. I think that we can collaborate together and kind of get a standardized template for everyone. So that way we can motion second carry it for the year. And then if we need to make any changes throughout the year, we add motion second carry for the following year. I definitely want to make sure that we're allowing enough time. I know that these new rules that I made were pretty quick, like the podium and all the kind of shortchanging on questions and everything else. I want to make sure that I'm allowing you guys time for that. And especially with community engagement too, I don't want to cut anyone off. You guys are constituents, you guys are members of the community, and we are representing people that are talking to us about these things. So I think if we sit down and get like a standardized template and kind kind of review some of the rules that I've implemented that you guys might aren't comfortable with. I would love to hear that, because this is part of our, our, how are we gonna reflect on these changes and whether or not we continue with them. So I don't know if that's something you want to talk about now. Just while we're here. If you guys had any concerns, anything going on that I can,
One thing maybe I'll just add on was, as far as decision making, I feel like, again, there's always like Dr. Miller said, like, there's always a gray area.
Yeah.
So we need to have a conversation and see what's happening. I feel like always, the short-term solution always, which is just, again, putting a Band-Aid, is like deciding what the precedent was and saying, okay, this is what we did, so we'll just keep it doing. But again, it's not really, sometimes you might question whether it's the right thing to do or not.
Mhm.
But again, it's just a separate fix, which is like, I would say, can we see what was done last year and just follow from there? But again, it's not like it's the perfect solution, but it's just like, as someone who's new or someone who's gonna come, it's like, hey, we need that content. But as far as decision making too, I think, how was the budget presented last year? And how does it compare to, this year's, the way it was presented, whether it was allowing more people to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the only other comment.
Yeah, as far as the templates, so, yeah, we approved a template for the school improvements. Now, the template, if you're talking about templates for presentations in general, that gets a little trickier because we get all kinds of different other presentations. There was some guidance in there about kind of what should be included in those, and that's fine. I don't know how, it depends on kind of what level of detail you want to go down to, and like I say, it gets tricky because outside of school improvement, that's a fairly constrained area. Beyond that, it's all kinds of different things that we get. And my only, I guess, and it kind of got in there, Lucio kind of laid it out. I mean, I was okay with the general, being a data person, I want to see, and we're talking about in here, presenting data, and I want to see trends, and I want to see comparisons, which typically we don't get much, comparisons to other districts or other schools, but that's kind of a general kind of high level thing. It's not, here's exactly what the page needs to look like. So I'm happy to have, it's probably best to, if we can pick a specific presentation, maybe we can talk about, okay, here's what we'd like to see or not see. I don't know.
ongoing process.
Ongoing process.
It's in that gray area where we're
Right.
kind of crossing into operations, and I don't want to do that to anyone. I want to make sure the staff doesn't have to get the data that we're asking
Right.
for, but I also want to make sure that we're not skipping over motion secretaries and.
Right.
Beyond that, anything else that we can think of while we have this time? Right, and that, Sheila, thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. I think we're.
Yeah, the only, to me, this dividing line between, superintendent operational, it's, I always try to keep it focused on, process. Is the process good? As opposed to, I'm not gonna pick a curriculum for you. I'm not gonna tell you, exactly, it gets a little gray. For example, pick the outdoor education one. That's one I would have liked to have done, but, I could, and even in the past, sometimes there was a year where I insisted on that being included in the budget, which is probably stepping, too far in, but if I back it up and say, well, how did you arrive at that? What was the process you used? So I try and back myself up a little bit. If you didn't use, so that's where it gets a little gray. If you didn't use a good process to arrive at that decision, then, I'm going to object based on the fact that you didn't do the process. Now, I may not like the outcome as well, but, and so that's where it gets a little gray in there, but
Yeah.
I think it's entirely appropriate for the board to focus on process. If your process isn't good, then.
A conversation is always good.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, I agree, yeah, and part of this, the working between all the different groups, It's about establishing, trust levels. And in this organization for years, and we still hear it, people coming up, well, I'm afraid to say because I'll get, the repercussions. And that's a whole culture change that, I know Dr. Bills has been working on and does really well. I mean, your comments about, whenever you see some friction or something, you just go right in and say, let's have a conversation about it, which is not typically what has been done in the past. And trust doesn't happen, I mean, you can destroy trust in a second, but it takes years to build it back up. So I think we're in the organization is kind of in that process of trying to develop more. When the layers all kind of trust each other more, then obviously these things work a lot better than this. If one layer doesn't, and it's tough, in public education in general, it's kind of structured to some degree to not trust different levels. And so it's a tricky thing to do, but it's one of those things you just need to persist on getting better at.
I do want to allow open dialogue for us since we are the collective authority here, setting the tone and allowing for your voices. I definitely want to make sure I'm better at that. So thank you guys.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
All right. Immediate feedback, right? Well, thank you all. Let's take a 5-minute break. I really appreciate the shift, like, people talking to each other. It's good. And modeling and practicing some of that, like, what's working. We made some changes. How's that working? It can also take time to, like, be able to get that feedback, like, on the spot. So again, I would encourage that, like, revisiting the periodically, right? Like, just because it was fine now, maybe in a month, it actually isn't working again, or in 2 months. So like that sort of ongoing reflection process, right? Or, new rules and processes can work for a while. Things shift, right? So building in those check-ins. So let's take about 5 minutes and then we're gonna transition into like what we do in those difficult moments. So, and how we navigate through those.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then I can do the reclick. Oh. There we go. Okay. All right, well, welcome back. We're gonna shift now into, so we have our values and most, you have these table texts now. Hope is that you'll have these at every board meeting, or anytime you're together in a space. So on one side, you have the board values. On the other side, you have, suggestions for constructive dialogue and one of our strategies. Those are just sample prompts, reminders, because sometimes when we feel like, there's a different opinion or like something hit us, like, we don't necessarily know how to start, so it can be helpful to just see the sentence prompt and then like fill in the blank, or just actually literally read what's on there and then go with what you're gonna say with it. So those are there. I also just wanted to, so we're gonna move into, I sort of brought this to talk, for us to have strategies around navigating all types of difficult moments, but it's also really rooted in deepening our anti-racist practices and deepening our equity approaches, because bias happens, microaggressions happen, we've seen it happen in public spaces or in meetings. So I just took a couple of excerpts from the anti-racism statement, and I put in purple a couple of things like that still continues to be really important. And not only this, as I look at the room of who currently is here as representing for the entire district, right, to really lean into challenging, your assumptions, listening, making sure we're creating a space to listen to diverse perspectives, and how we continue to foster empathy, right, and continue to own that. And each of us always has a role to play in that work.
By the way, just for context here, a student wrote this.
It was built by students, correct? Yeah, and this is just, there's a whole statement, I just pulled out like 2 sections of it. Yeah, students wrote this, student advisory group. And then another piece from it is that TSD will provide ongoing PD for all staff on topics such as cultural competency, implicit bias, and the history of systemic racism. So this is something that as a district has been embraced, but I really appreciate the last sentence of it. We invite all members of the TSD community to join us in this important work. And so we're gonna treat this last hour together as part of you all continuing to do that important work where we're leaning into, particularly for any identities that we hold that are of privilege. We, I would say, have a special responsibility or opportunity to then address and advocate and be, I would say, co-conspirator versus ally, to really ensure that we're deepening our practice and have the skills and ability to step in or to acknowledge when something is inappropriate or harm has happened. But it's also, these tools are really good for just when we're in conflict with each other. So they're very versatile. So we're gonna dive into those. I think what we're gonna do, so this section is around navigating difficult moments. We've developed a response toolkit for you with some different tools to use. Just so you all know, when I use the word bias or microaggressions, or unconscious bias, I just like to make sure y'all have like shared definitions or understanding. So we are all humans, we all have brains, we all have bias. So general bias is gonna be favored for or against something. Sometimes considered to be unfair. We have biases about everything. Those are our known biases. There are bigger issues, those unconscious biases, that are usually shaped because of our lived experiences and our exposure to other stereotypes or misinformation, or just lack of exposure to other groups different from our own. But that we can build up these biases and not realize that we have them without the support of others helping us to like call in to see them. Or we do our own learning and reflection to do that. And then microaggressions, just really recognizing that not only are they everyday, like verbal, they can also be nonverbal slights towards, this references like targeted groups. It can also be like environmental slights. Often, they're unintentional. They can often be said even within like best of intentions or trying to be polite or just lack of knowledge, right? Which are often doing the best they can. And it still has a harmful effect on the person who receives it or experiences it. The strategies we're going to talk about can help us sort of build our own, like to undo our unconscious bias and to address microaggressions, but it's also going to help us navigate other conflicts. So what I mean by like other difficult moments, it could be when we're like have a misalignment with like board value or an agreement that we have. So we said, we're gonna we actually kind of named them, right? Like we have like transparency, we have a process around like community involvement with our budget process. How do we like address that something didn't happen or that we need to like get better about a thing, right? So it could be a misalignment with a value or with a policy or protocol, a role bound, like when we have boundaries, creeping into other areas. Or maybe there's a pattern of behavior. So maybe one time it's like, okay, yeah, that wasn't like such a huge impact, but then something kind of continues to happen. And we notice maybe a pattern or an unintended consequence or impact that maybe we didn't see and when a single instance happens. So. I think you shut it off for me. Okay. Doing it again, it's not advancing.
Yeah, if you click.
Or did my thing, maybe my thing, right? No, it's good. Okay. Couple other things to just remember, intent and impact aren't the same things, right? And so I definitely appreciate, like, we want to give grace and appreciate, like, everyone's doing the best they can, sharing from their own experiences. You can acknowledge and care about the intentions, and we need to address impact or patterns on things, right? So it's a both and there. And then different situations are gonna need different sized approaches. So, Dr. Pedrosa mentioned like, those like gray area conversation, issues tends to be like a conversation by conversation time, right? So that's like one approach to like have a direct conversation. There might be other issues or things that are gonna warrant a deeper structured process. Okay. I think what's happening, okay, there we go. So, we're gonna start again, I'm gonna play some music. I'm gonna let you all read through the strategies instead of me talking at you the whole time. And there are 5. The first one you already know, so you can kind of skim that one pretty quickly. Which is this constructive dialogue prompts. So that's the easiest one and it's there for all of us for quick reference. So you're gonna read through them. There's some notes on how it works. We're gonna think about what feels like easy for you, where you're kind of already doing that strategy, maybe you just never called it that name. And also where you might be needing to use a couple of those strategies hand in hand. So I'm gonna play some music again. You don't need to read verbatim, but kind of, you can skip through. We're gonna take about 5 minutes to look through that.
Hey everyone, I was just trying to see if there was the handout available virtually. Is it in the attachment somewhere?
Looking for that to send over
Yes,
to
I'm
you.
gonna send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
And just send an email to you.
Thanks. Now I got to figure out how to see the video. To see the
Okay. Back on.
All right. Why not? Well, we're gonna dive into these a little bit more, so it's gonna take a lot to like process through them or reading them is different than using them. But a couple notes, wanted to sort of clarify sort of how these work, that, again, they're meant to be like, what does the situation need? So it's really like, what tool is gonna help for whatever scenario or situation you're navigating? So I always think of like the strategies for constructive dialogue being helpful throughout all of them, and so you'll see that's like, kind of stretching across all of it, because it's just how we have like those prompts and ways to like have that conversation. The policy protocol recenter, again, meant to be like just a fairly quick strategy that really is related to your policies or the operational protocols, those kind of pieces. They may still need, like, you might need request a follow-up for that, right? It's part of it, think about your, to your newer, you're gonna have 2 new board members, so that's why I put like the arrow, like, that's not meant to like, basically what I'm trying to say is like, these are not meant to be like rigid, this is the only way that this, strategy works, like, use these in ways that make sense for you all. And then the values pause for clarity and request for follow-up are really kind of meant to be like, just the deeper, like going deeper with more like conversation or support or time is needed around a situation. So values pause is meant generally to be the like quick in the moment, like you're at a public meeting and maybe even a member of the public says something that's, kind of a biased comment or a microaggression. Again, we're not gonna like debate their intent, we don't know them. But as a board, like as leaders and sort of around, you setting kind of the tone for the district, you can redirect or, simply say like, actually, we use this phrase or, in our meetings, we don't use this term, we use this phrase, right? You can just sort of redirect and remodel, or model, or if it's something around a board value or protocol, you can reiterate what, our protocol or process is in the moment, if it's something that a board member has done. But it's really like redirect or model the appropriate language, reference that it makes sense to folks around the kind of general values pause. Where we get into pause for clarity or request for follow-up is, again, we all have biases, we all have unconscious biases. We're also all still learning, right? And for the new board members, we might highlight a policy or a protocol or something, and not realize it, or like need more information. Like you guys are bombarded with so much information. Like when I read your orientation, I'm like, how do you even keep track of everything you're supposed to do? That's where like pause for clarity can come in. So it can be, or the request for follow-up. So it can be related both to like a microaggression that was happening or a bias pattern that's happening, or simply like, yeah, we have a really complex system that we're navigating and we need to have like time to just go deeper in conversation about a thing. That all makes sense on a high level, that these are meant to be really like, they can be used for those more like anti-racist practices where we're really trying to deepen our equity practices, our anti-racist practices, but they can also really be used for like holding each other accountable to our values, to our protocols, and to all those like gray areas that happen, right? Yeah.
I guess the other thing that comes to mind for me, the request for follow-up. So one that comes up for me for a amount of time is, I want some more data on the subject. And frequently the response will come back to me that, well, that's going to take us a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, so the request for follow-up in this context is really more about like when our action, so it's not necessarily a request for follow-up in terms of like there was a presentation and needs more data or something like that, but if it's let's say what you all notice is that like a particular pattern is happening in behavior in board meetings, or you have a new member that comes in says something not appropriate, you might call a values pause and just like name, the thing or like redirect the behavior, and maybe it's in a public meeting, right? So you're not gonna like go into a deep dive conversation, but maybe that new board member, does ask for like a pause for clarity, like, I don't know what happened or why you like shifted or what that thing was. And so that conversation happens following those steps, but that board member still is like, I don't really know, or I like want some more support or I need some practice on this, then they could request a follow-up, which could be like, maybe it's a resource guide, or maybe there's an online webinar that you can learn more about it, right? To dive in, or it's a one-on-one with Dr. Pedrosa to have like a conversation to like really unpack or like dive deeper around like, maybe it's the budgeting process, and like, I have no idea, like there's a lot to learn. So it's really meant to be more about like the person who like did something or needs more information for themselves, like for their behavior or their learning, not so much about like data from like to understand maybe something that the board has to decide on. Does that make sense? I explain that.
Just in the context of handling something that's violating policy or anti-racist and our inclusive goals.
Yes.
I will follow up.
Yeah, except that, some of the data that I asked, we're talking about anti-racist. I'm always looking for disproportionalities. Show me disproportionalities.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not presented. It's just the high level data, everybody data. And I want to see disproportionalities. That's how you get at the anti-racist stuff. So I think, it does tie in, I think. It depends on what
Yeah.
I hear you. We'll follow up one-on-one. I'll let her kind of continue.
Yeah, I think that's fair for something like that. I think that is back to that like collective board decision to say like, as a board, we need to see like, so, like to live into our like anti-racist goals. We need to see data that shows like, I would say like disaggregated by race and like breaking it, right? So like that would be not what we're talking about here with the request for follow-up. That's a like board decision saying, hey, we're gonna decide on this policy or see to measure our effectiveness or look at how we're improving. Then as a collective board, you might say, make that request, right? But that has to be as a collective versus this is like an individual request for follow-up that's like for support, for learning.
Redirection almost.
Yeah. That. And like, making space for like individual learning or like repair, because back to like, what you said, like trust takes a long time to build and like gets broken in an instant. So that request for follow-up time too is like that repair time. So think of this request for follow-up as like training, deeper learning, or like relationship trust rebuilding time, restoration. Okay. So let's I'm gonna read that for a moment and then I'll get. So for me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? So really think about, again, these strategies. So we're navigating difficult moments and I'm creating, giving you tools that can apply to like policies and protocols, but it's also like, you're all humans and you're gonna have like 2 more humans in here. Then Dr. Pedrosa, like, hurt, harm, unintended or not, like can happen. And we want to create the systems and supports to be able to navigate through those things so that you all can beat those headlines in the future. Okay. So that's what these strategies are ultimately about. So we're gonna do a couple of practice things to just kind of think about what does this look like. So I don't want to just give you a list of tools like here you go, but let's actually apply them a little bit. So for now, we're just gonna ask like what strategy or combination of strategies might be used. So a board member wants additional information after, this is actually perfect, wants additional information after staff presentation. begin giving the staff member a list of reports and data they would like prepared for the next meeting. So what strategies or what applies here in this situation? I want us to think about our roles, our boundaries, and then the strategies of how we, what applies here.
I mean, I can see this tied to, cause for clarity. I mean, they're asking for additional information. And yeah, maybe, yeah, I mean, from between the five, I feel like you want to understand, more,
I think the pause for clarity would be,
understand something.
yeah, if that
Okay.
pause for clarity is like going deeper into like
What
something
the,
wasn't working.
okay.
Right,
Okay.
think of it as more like raising a concern if you're addressing that concern.
And we can always start with constructive dialogue, just like it kind of says there, where we open up with like, can you say what you mean by what you're looking for in this particular instance? Then we set a policy with motion second standard or motion second carry and go into more of our, hey, and stop me if I'm wrong. If we need more elaboration, we can take that pause and take that time. If something's not making sense between all of us. But in this case, I think we would have to motion second carry and then have a discussion, and then by the next meeting, they have to implement it if we take that motion second carry.
Yeah, so as chair, you would say what I heard from the collective board is that we do want to proceed with this. Yeah, okay, so summarizing, I guess, fiscal processing, we all are in agreement, so I guess that ties to the construction dialogue process. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe the policy protocol recenter seems like right, because my end of where
That's
that's
what I'm
something like my understanding is an individual board member cannot make that request. The collective, which is that, and I assume that's what you mean by like motion second carry.
Because then it becomes
The
now,
board
yeah.
is asking.
Well, this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, was that the presentation, protocols or standards, if, I mean, right now, we really, don't have much for just in general. We should probably, I mean, we started, the last time, with something, but
Yeah.
that probably needs to be iterated a few times because
Trust me,
because, if it's, yeah, if the staff presentation is just whatever they want to present, and
Yeah.
then using the disproportionality one, I mean, we see this a lot, they'll present data, at the high level, but it's how do you connect it to the anti-racist values? How do you do that? And so that's where we could, build into the protocols. Okay, if you're going to do a presentation, make sure you, do the analysis. And so they know that that's required beforehand. And so it all kind of ties. So it probably has, going back to the policy protocol recenter. I mean, we need to be refining our, protocols
Yeah,
to make.
I know it's pretty vague right now.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, it's a start, so.
Yeah, I want to make sure that
Yeah,
everyone on the table is able
Right.
to say what they want to say, see what they want to see.
Right.
I want you to have your data, but I
Right.
also want to make sure that we're following these procedures.
yeah, and I mean, the things I asked for are all tied, I like to think are tied back to some of our core values, but we probably need to make that more explicit to staff that, we want to see that.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't come out as this is a new request, that'll take a long time. Well,
That is our job to make sure that you're right, that the staff understand what the process is. They overthink it because they're nervous and they're stressed, and they actually defer me to old practices or old habits. So that's our job, to make sure that nothing moves forward without having it reviewed.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think we could take a values pause or even a point of order to kind of readjust ourselves if this does come up and we're not quite sure. And then we could start changing the policy,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
working it so it's a
Yeah.
little bit more digestible, a little
Yeah.
less anxiety,
Yeah.
kind of a deal.
Yeah, I think just to correct, it would be the policy protocol. Values policy, like, yeah, values policy is really gonna be like tied more to the values or to like bias, microaggressions.
Because
Gotcha.
that's a protocol that's already been established, so you're
Yeah.
asking, so the values pod is to make sure to get at, I mean, the protocol question is to make sure, what's the first, the issue? Is the issue that the staff didn't do what they needed to do, or is the issue that, that it's not clear on the template that we need additional data? So those are the two, things that why we have to recenter that conversation around. But this is the protocol, and this was approved by the board, and so we need to hold. So it could be either or, but it's just saying, that we need to stick to that recentering, because like I said, then that's on us to say, then we probably need to go back to the table and readdress that staff member or like whatever the issue is.
And just beyond this conversation too, if we're at any point feeling like we need to pause conversation, I feel like that could still be a point of order, not just a values pause, but if we need to take more time, I'm really focused on trying to move things along, but please utilize the point of order or the values pause if I cross a line at any.
And the values clause could be like, one of your, so if it is like we're moving too quickly through something, the values clause for like curiosity or for transparency or something, so we could call a value clause around the value, like.
That's-
Tied to value, yeah,
That's
exactly.
kind of what I was thinking was with the values and group agreements, transparency on that one. and
Gotcha,
Curiosity, allowing you that time to be there.
Yeah.
But if it's not a values pause or if you guys aren't calling point of order, I don't know. So.
Okay. This one, this is for you all to practice, the redirecting or emphasizing value agreement. So during a presentation or board discussion, someone refers to a group of students as those kids who just don't care about school. What might any one of you say to like model, redirect, or emphasize one of our values or group agreements? You think about it, you can write it down for a minute. This is where it's like putting it to practice. It's like easy to read it and then like, okay, what would I say?
This is the part where I throw like, you asked which out of these five is most difficult to address.
Yeah,
You know, when you hear this in the moment, you're the moment, you're like, oh, how are we gonna respond to this? You know, you're just thinking of it, so.
yeah, that's why we're practicing.
Yeah.
When it's not real.
Yeah.
I think if we start with the prompt of, can you say what you mean by that and open up the conversation, depending on the situation, like if we're talking in the context of those kids who don't care about school and a specific race and a specific demographic, then we can tie it back to our anti-racism statement and kind of recenter it about this cause. But if it's something along the lines of, okay, well, we have this group of diverse students and they just specifically don't care. How do we go about, okay, well, let's recenter the fact that they're kids and they are learning, and we might be having an adult situation rather than just the kid or kids in this case.
Yeah, so for me, this is the values pause, because the way I think about that particular subject is not, don't care about school. The question is, you know, what causes them not to be engaged in school? And
Yeah.
there's a cause underneath there.
That's a
And-
great
And
read.
we need to examine why is that, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good example of like rewording it or using the, to like understand, like, you know, oh, I'm curious, who are you, can you say more what you mean by that? Or, what students are you referring to like lay into that curiosity?
But also to get into whether or not we need to have a deeper conversation either after the meeting. Or
Yeah.
take that pause.
Or let's say it's a member of the public commenting, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean,
Your question, I think is good.
I've had this conversation with some people, and just, you know,
Yeah.
it's easy to dismiss people and say, oh, they don't care or whatever. parents don't care. I mean, I've heard that
Yeah.
a lot, and unfortunately, it's fairly endemic among, high poverty areas, and it's not at all that people don't care.
What's getting in the way, or,
Yeah.
how are you,
I mean, there's lots of barriers.
Yeah.
other way to do this is like lean on your headlines, actually at Hill School District, we believe that everyone actually like really cares about school and just needs support, or it's, or there's something that we need to do. I'll show you my face. So you can make some sort of
Still holding the high expectation.
yeah, so hold a high expectation, or like, actually, we believe all our students actually are capable of excelling, and so we don't like to use any like deficit language about students, and it could be a quick statement like that. Or like, we're gonna use,
Kids are listening,
yeah,
they're listening to us, yeah.
and words are seeds, so,
I had to do this recently at a community meeting where somebody was asking about safety, but made a comment about like that we weren't focused on it, and I just recentered our values, said, no, that's not factual. I don't know where you got that evidence from, but these are the facts.
yeah.
And so I just recentered because I think this is somebody who's, who hasn't been in school in a long time. So, they just had assumptions around safety. And I gave them the data. I said, this is our data, like that's not true. So anyway, but it's hard to do that in the moment sometimes. So it's really, I would say, this is the hardest thing to
I
address.
agree.
Yeah.
You especially have to be very careful, with the groups of, those, like, there's protected classes, there's protected, groups, and there's, federal laws, state laws and local laws that make sure that these community group, that these individuals are protected, and if we're, kind of using those worded terminology, it doesn't look good, and it could have an effect on us.
Yeah.
So the next, so the next words that come from a statement as be mindful of who your audience is.
Yeah. Okay. The biggest tip I have for that, using the values clause, is for you all to like write down a few of the like things you've heard in the past, or something you are afraid someone might say in a meeting. And you like randomly pick one and just start practicing like, what would I say? What would I do? And then as you start to do that more, it's gonna become easier to have your like redirections or your leading into, what you might have your own sort of phrase or like thing that you lean to for that redirection. So just for each of you, I just invite that like continuing to practice when it's not in the moment. This is gonna help you in those real moments.
We can catch you off guard.
Yeah,
But if we are caught off guard at any point when we do have a public comment where we're not sure on what to tackle and we think of something later, feel free to email me and we will start formulating a plan.
yeah. We have just a little bit of time left. I want us to practice this values clause and posture clarity. So that's that question format. So I'm giving us a scenario. We're gonna pair up again. And this is the essentially number 4. Well, kind of 3 and 4 together. So really 4. So maybe something values clause kind of already happened. But you're moving into having that conversation, pause for clarity. So the bottom of page 3. So you're having a deeper conversation about how the values clause is called. You're gonna go through those steps and having that conversation to again model doing it, but it's not real. And you're each gonna take a turn being the one who's like raising the concern or calling that clause, and the one who's receiving that, like getting that clarity of that information. So our scenario here is essentially that students feel dismissed, or like student voice is not being heard, and maybe a values clause came up or was named, and the person like that values pause was directed towards, doesn't seem like that there was an issue, so they're asking for a pause for clarity because they think everything was fine. Does that make sense? So one person's gonna be the one, who said that quote. And the other person is addressing that person. And then you'll switch roles to practice. Does that make sense?
So taking that values pause to say, hey.
Well, pause for clarity.
Pause for clarity.
Because assume kind of in the moment, like something,
Yeah.
like maybe in the meeting, like there was a quick pause, like, oh, let's actually hear, we want to hear
Yeah.
students, but,
I do definitely have a tendency to not look over to the right every once in a while, so if you
so you
guys.
might miss, yeah.
Please stop me and make sure our students are getting their voices.
And that could also be the, like, maybe it's a new person who's like, we listened to them, they spoke, and don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
Then you're having this pause for clarity
Gotcha.
conversation.
It's happened a couple times this year.
Yeah, so practice,
Yep.
if you were to actually have a deeper conversation, how you would have that conversation.
But we also had one incident where it was handled successfully. I mean, not perfectly, but we did follow up, and I'll share with my partner what happened, but yeah.
All right, so we're just gonna take about, so this conversation is gonna flow quickly, I'm gonna say about 2 minutes per person.
Sure.
Or 2 minutes to go through the conversation once, and then you're gonna switch roles and do 2 minutes again.
Don't we move and switch? partners?
Yeah, let's switch up.
Yeah, I'll move over by you.
Sounds good.
Oh. Do you want to?
I think if I was on the opposite side, I would take that at least pause.
Yeah, I think
Can we get some collaboration just a little bit more for our students?
Oh, there's one in the back. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
This is, that's for you guys too. This is
Yeah,
for
I
you.
just got off of what you got.
This one, I open this one.
But yeah, I would just take that values pause or pause for clarity.
Right.
Pause for clarity.
I don't think we're getting voices fully out there, even though they've already talked, I think we should let them express themselves a little bit more, especially if they're hearing other
I guess
classes.
if I was
How do we
student
split those up?
and I was bringing up concerns and the board member said, Laura, thanks for sharing that. I think one students understand it differently.
so which, so what are we supposed to
Acknowledge.
Rule.
What
Yeah,
I
so
said,
this is I'm saying, hey, let's take a values pause and re-talk about this.
And I'm supposed to take action,
Yeah.
student side of it,
Right.
or another board member?
Yeah, I think the
Oh, another.
reading,
Um,
I think me and.
Was it?
Yeah.
No, that was the big issue that we had in springs.
yeah.
The students
I
being
want to
able
be
to
in
say.
good discussion.
But I think the
Yeah.
most important part is
What
figuring out
kind
the
of,
action
there's
step.
no details here, so.
Listen carefully to what
What-
the concerns are.
what is it?
Because that thing I learned is that not
What
everything
are the
is concerned
concerns?
to the
We're
students.
fascinated.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, that.
If we were to just
for
leave it
me,
at, okay, well, we have
it's
this thing,
about
but I have some concerns.
Support,
Okay.
you know, I had. The teachers, but it didn't
Yeah.
trickle, so I just went and told them, and they were like, oh, thank you, we didn't know. And I did the same thing with parents, oh, thank you, we didn't know. Sometimes it's hard to understand, sometimes things don't trickle
Listen and
through all
then
the students
move
in
on.
the same way. But they also
No,
feel
they're
not,
like
they're not
teacher.
curious.
So we had this
Yeah.
happen with Mr. Stitch.
Underlying.
Mr. Stitch,
Yeah.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's like
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
That's gonna
Our
happen. So it's sort of like.
concerns. Yeah.
And you go, say
So,
legislature.
Yeah, so Scott went and did his homework,
Phones.
and then.
And they were just like,
afterwards,
no,
we
you'll-
told
you'll-
him,
Yeah, right.
And I told Tammy.
Well, wait,
student
values
reps to hire
Why
guidance.
are they gonna understand
And
it
we
start?
started-
What problems are gonna arise?
This
What is that gonna make us look like
And
as
then we
policy?
reported,
Yeah.
Because there was some
But
what we learned
it's still
was
that
misinformation
It's actually just.
about what the students
came up
understood, that they
lot
were
of,
not getting
paid,
certain credits or certain things or certain access,
you know,
and so
he-
Scott went and got
He was.
all
he
that
was,
information.
you know, give us our kind of about
So
the-
he
the
worked with
budget and
data
all
piece,
the-
but then I worked in
And
pushing
the
them.
Teachers said that.
Getting
I
with
mean,
kids and just say, look,
I guess it's,
this is what's
yeah,
happening.
it's
So that's a way to resolve this, is
Especially
because
for
sometimes we're breaking down a barrier, if you have an assumption about something, but you're not understanding.
it says you have to do that.
That actually, like you
So,
said, your concern was, I think there was other concerns, but
yeah,
they said
it's-
was that concern,
for me,
I
it's
still
always
think
about,
Tanya still did a nice job handling that
you know,
meeting session,
respecting
so.
the students.
But
I think
it's
they have
hard, it's hard,
a
because
very,
sometimes you have to go back.
Perspective,
it's hard,
but also
but,
it's about educating and
That
helping
means
them
we.
understand
that was
all the other
efficient
aspects of the
experience.
work as well.
Yeah.
And so that they're,
Definitely.
you know.
I mean, if
but
I was in
it's
the
not,
students' shoes,
as black and white
I
as-
sure,
as
back
black
to
as we would all like to think it is.
Yeah,
If they didn't hear my
But-
concern,
but having that
I would definitely
respect,
just
Respect
journal that.
Yeah.
Just enough to
Write it
provide
down,
the
just say, you
education
know,
as
how
well.
I felt, because I feel like,
Listen to what
you know,
you're saying.
a lot of things they say
And sometimes
is very
you can do-
emotional, you know,
Well,
and
and
for
yeah,
someone to come up and
hopefully,
feel like, oh, well, they disregard my
you know,
comments
that's
or
that's
it feels like
giving us the
my
ideas about.
my voice
you know,
is
back
invalid.
Well,
to
I'm in a position that's like,
So,
sort of like, not a value
I hope
position,
that-
everybody can do it,
Yeah.
right, like,
Yeah.
that's
we
the
could
piece
find
that
those
is
students
important,
and
is
we
we
actually
make sure that.
get the.
I think it's part of
Yeah.
the journey, I think
Say,
personally, I think
Yeah, we
it's
heard
also
you
just like,
and
I don't
did
know,
something.
when I feel distressed,
So
I
that's
feel
part of
something
this.
angry, just
Yeah.
writing down the events that occurred.
And there is an idea that they come up with.
You know,
Yeah.
coming back the next day.
You know, we actually have done, it just something that we let them know.
double back.
I should.
Yeah, the feedback is big for me.
You know,
That way
maybe,
it gives them, you
uh,
know. a
respond
bit of agency.
more, yeah.
So one of the things I'm saying is usually my staff is more proactive on some of these things instead of having to react all the time, because
Yeah,
And
I
forget
think
about the
like
good they
we
ever
assume
talked about.
that the principals.
my decision is made.
And you know, you have 20 teachers,
Or,
5
you know,
teachers,
the
everyone
reality
is
is a lot of
gonna
times,
handle a
it's
communication
3 or 4
strategy
years, you know.
differently. Same
Yeah,
thing with the
that's still
principals,
a good-
like we assume
you know.
something's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
even if I gotta call you 3 or 4 years, yeah, I'm gonna do it.
That's the way it works.
And so I think that's part of it,
Patience,
you know,
yeah.
being more proactive, but I think, but
Absolutely.
I think the most important thing
I'm gonna bring
is
us
respond
back
to
to
them
our
in
time.
some, that they feel hurt, and that we listen to them. That's the most important thing. But I think, yeah, a lot of it's deep emotion, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring us back. I do have one other, one here, just to model. So some of the things, if we were to go into a pause for clarity, again, like, the pause for clarity is when you are actually gonna have a conversation afterwards. So this isn't like if a member of the public comments, right? We're likely not gonna have a follow-up conversation with them, right? But someone, that we do have a relationship with or ongoing engagement with says something, just being really clear that you're gonna wanna like name the thing that's like, so when you said this during the discussion, the implication, like, and you can always, you know, so like, I know sometimes we say things, we don't necessarily realize what we're saying, or like, we're in the moment, discussion. But we're gonna say, like we said, we keep offering opportunities, but some of these families just aren't engaged in their kids' education. It really is making a judgment about families in which we know very little about, and instead we really need to ask, like, what are we not doing? So I'm gonna borrow Dave's comment here. Like, instead, we need to ask, like, what are we not doing properly to help families like be engaged? But it's making an assumption, without any data or information about a family's intent or desires. So in the future, if we're talking about family engagement, I need you to not like make a comment that is evaluative or judging a group of families without anything behind it. So I named what was said that was problematic, the impact or why it's problematic, and then what needs to happen in the future. Very specific, like that kind of statement about about families is not something that we're gonna say going forward, right? Does that make sense? Like, name the behavior,
Yeah.
name the impact, name what should happen in the future. Maybe it's a policy protocol, right? Like, our board protocol says this, in the future, I need you to follow this protocol. I reiterate that because all y'all had good conversations, but you didn't practice the conversation. So just calling you out a little bit in a graceful way. So I just wanted to model that, so like, if you're the one, if I'm giving you that, so I say, Ara, last meeting, I heard you said this. You're gonna like, I'm not just gonna like jump into that conversation, we're gonna like give each other like a heads up, hey, I actually wanna talk about something that I heard you say at the last meeting. So we're gonna agree on it first. We're gonna do that, like preparing ourselves to have that conversation. And then listening, we're not gonna defend. You can ask questions to like oh, like what part of the meeting was that? Or like, when did that happen? That's just questions for clarity, but not rationalizing. It's very quick to want to like defend ourselves. That's not the point of this conversation. You were just listening to hear it. And then if the action that we give is like, you don't really know how to do that action, that's where that follow-up request, or it's like, you think about it more and you need more information or support, that's how it leads to that follow-up request. All right, we're basically at time. I have all the strategies here. Oh, I did have a couple example quotes. So like for the policy protocol recenter, like this sounds like an operational concern. So the next step is for the superintendent to follow up, right? So that's a quick like redirect quote. Or we just jump in and say our protocol is that the board acts collectively. So this request for more information, something we need to discuss, or easier, like this would fall under the like motion secretary or whatever the policy is, okay? You have these slides, so sometimes it's helpful to see what those redirect comments could be to help you. Okay, and then.
So this one, that actually brings up kind of an interesting, so we have in our processes, the questions that can be submitted in advance. And it causes me to think a little bit, I mean, I put lots of questions in there. Some of it is I'm interested in what the staff response is, but then at the meeting, we can discuss, what, if there's kind of additional work required. So I guess it seems like it's still okay to put the question in the board questions and find out what the response from the staff is, and then in the board meeting, discuss whether if it requires some significant more work, then how does that fit into our, the template protocols and all that kind of stuff? Okay. So it's kind of working through in my mind, because the questions I ask typically, a chunk of them are just clarifying questions about what does this mean, what does it mean? But some of them sometimes are about, we really need some more data on something. And so I'll probably still put those in there, but then we'll have a
Motion
discussion okay.
That's kind of where my current interpretation and kind of what's been laid out is we want to make sure that we're still following that motion secretary. And then as we go, I want to make sure that your data is being, put out there.
Yeah.
But the long list of questions, we are totally awesome. And it's more of a, during the questions only portion, we want to elaborate on a specific answer. And if we need to actually motion secretary for additional information.
It's good, yeah, get clarity, my agenda, the protocols. We did a lot of verbal processing and reading and talking for any of you who are visual learners. Switching up a little bit for a image to choose for how to reflect or represent how you want to show up or what you want to carry forward as a board member from today. So it could be something from the growth mindset article, it could be maybe strategies, it could be something else from a conversation you had, but pick an image. I realize the one on the middle far right is a lighthouse. It's really pretty sunset.
I mean, since we're all here, probably Unity is a good one, the one on the left,
Yeah.
middle left.
Yeah.
I liked, the nature ones are pretty.
A bit more
So I think sustainable decisions, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the one in the middle left, but I think the puzzle pieces is kind of where we're at right now. I would love to see the middle left, us in harmony, walking hand in hand, but right now we're kind of piecing together in terms of us being new to each other of the big picture.
I guess the one that struck me immediately was the compass, just kind of making sure that, everything's going in the same direction.
Yeah.
It kind of ties back to the alignment word and focus.
I was gonna say, I love the two, with not on the board, but as a support of the board, this, I think both those two pictures to the left of the earth were the ones, but for different reasons. The puzzle, the unity one for sure, and the diversity and the, what we need to aspire to. But our system is complex, which is why I think the puzzle pieces, also the green reminds me of Washington State, started thinking about that, and the complexities of our state, and how we're trying to take all these puzzle pieces. I put them together but to get to the picture on the left. So I think of systems and then people, together.
Also, you guys seem to have a big puzzle always.
I know, it's always going. It's actually it's very interesting. People who gather around, you'll see people waiting and they're like just putting the pieces together.
That's a good point.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. My recommendation is you keep these, strategies nearby on hand, because it does take time and practice to be able to feel like they're yours, and you want to call them different things, that's fine too, like what I named them. But if it's easier for like, you want to eventually come up with your own sort of names and structure for these tools, that's totally fine. But I just really encourage that they stay, just like with the table tents, like having these for reference, even during the, like, names, like having a physical handout, so like, you could do a, you know, you heard something, you're like, a redirect, like, you can quickly read it, right? Like, okay, I can say a version of this, right? Until it starts to feel more natural. And then if you actually are gonna have a like pause for clarity conversation, like, there's nothing wrong with like scripting it out. If you're the one who's like calling for that conversation to like happen, write out or have the template there with you. The slides have more examples. There's a bunch of strategy slides, so you can refer to those.
Perfect. Was Proctor still on?
No,
Okay.
Right? Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for taking this Saturday.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Does the chair have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Sorry.
It's been motion seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. We are adjourned at what time is it?
1:35.
11:37.
I was like, I feel like I
Meeting
did
adjourned.
a minutes. Yeah. We'll do. Yeah.